Is infinite banking legal? I have a confession to make. I'm Chris Miles and I actually use it. And no, I've never been arrested using it before. I have been arrested for other things. I'm just kidding. No, they haven't arrested me at all. Nobody's ever caught me yet. Just kidding. That's not true either. I've not done anything illegal that way. But in all seriousness, I do want to actually show you how this is legal and legit, and that banks and businesses have been using this really for years. They've been using it legitimately to protect their own money, and how you can actually do it for yourself. And in fact, if you stick to the end, I'll not only talk about how you can use it to protect your money, but also grow it faster. So stick around to the end. As I mentioned before, banks and big businesses have been using this strategy for many, many years. In fact, many small businesses have been doing the same thing. For example, even during the last recession in 2008, I remember seeing many banks like Wells Fargo, even Washington Mutual before they went under, right? And several other banks were putting sometimes 15, 20, or even more, even like 30+% of their cash reserves inside using this infinite banking strategy, where they would buy life insurance policies and store their cash there. Now, why would banks do that? And why would big businesses do it too? Why would guys like Walt Disney, why would they use it to actually build out Disney World? Why would they use that? Why did Ray Kroc use it to start McDonald's when he bought it over from the McDonald's brothers? You know, why this used for even Pampered Chef for the seed money to start that business? Why did she use it for that? All these questions really all come back to the same thing, is that this is a big, nice place to store your money, right? It's a great place to store your money, earn more than 0.nothing% at the bank, while also protecting from taxes and in most states, lawsuits and creditors. Did you know that you could have millions of dollars stored here and lawsuits and creditors could not get to that money, especially if you use it for your own personal sake? By the way, big banks and businesses don't get this much protection as you would get personally. That's a nice little bonus tip for you. Now, big banks have been using this because they need cash safe. You may not know this, but many big banks, when they are able to lend money, they can lend more than what they have in their own possession. They're legally allowed to do that. In fact, they can loan out to up to 10 times the amount that they hold in cash. Now, what determines how much they can do or what multiplier effect they can actually use in that is actually where their money is stored. For example, they store it in just simple cash or really just somewhere safe, super safe, they can loan out 10 times. Now, if they store their money in little riskier places, they might only leverage like 2 or 3 times that much money. But with life insurance, it's one of those top tier capitals that they have. And so they can actually leverage a lot more of that cash that's there. They can loan out sometimes 7, 8 times the amount that they store inside their life insurance policies. That's why they store it there, because not only do they get more leverage, but they get paid more than if they just held it in cash on hand. That's the big reason. The other thing too is for big businesses and even smaller businesses too, is that this is a great place to store money to keep it safe. Because let's be honest, the number one reason that businesses go out of business is because they lack capital. They get to the point where eventually they have no more cash and they can't keep functioning. So what's one of the big ways to solve that liquidity problem is have cash. But not just store cash in a simple checking or savings account, which you can do, of course, that's fine. But if you can have also stored in a place like this, where again, tax-free, or it can be tax-free, also protected from lawsuits and creditors to some level, even though it's with business. And of course, it's just a great place to store cash that's like a supercharged tax-free savings account, right? That could be a wonderful addition for them. And so that's why businesses have been using this for so many years. I mentioned Disney, right? Walt Disney had been in a place where he already started Disneyland. That was a success. His next project, his eyes were now on the swamplands of out near Orlando, Florida. Now, of course, when he proposed this to the banks thought he was crazy. And so he said, well, listen, if I put up some of the collateral, will you come in with the rest of the money? They said yes. So he put his house, he actually leveraged the equity from his home, and he leveraged the equity or the cash that's inside his life insurance policy, not the death benefit. And that's great and all, but he was leveraging this tax-free savings account that was inside. He was leveraging the cash in there as a way for them to say, now we'll come in with our money, because now you're putting a little bit more skin in the game. You know, I've actually done the same thing myself. In fact, whenever I apply for a loan, like a mortgage, if I'm going to buy an investment property or even my own house, and they always ask you for what are your liquid reserves? Where do you keep your cash? Although I have cash in several different bank accounts, I'll just send them a statement for my life insurance. And guess what? Check. It marks, it clears off. It's easy for them to see that it's there. It's a liquid reserve. Did you know your 401k does not count as that? No, the 401k is not liquid, and so they don't even count that as a real asset. It's like those illiquid assets that they say, well, that's no good to us, because really the banks are worried about if they're going to give you a loan is, will you pay us back? So yes, they want to see liquid cash that's available. So I'll use my life insurance that's there. By the way, when I'm also storing cash, I don't want to get paid nothing on my money putting with the bank. My wife wants $300,000 just sitting in a bank doing nothing that we have just for emergencies. Well, $300,000 making 0.1% at our credit union pays us $300 a year, and then I got to pay about $100 in taxes a year on that money. Where instead, if I store it in my life insurance, I'll still keep a little bit in the bank, like $50,000, but the other $250,000 I keep inside my infinite banking policy. Why? Because it's not only is it protected and safe, but guys, here's the thing, it's paying me a lot more. Even if I only make 5%, which by the way, it's paying more than that, but if it only paid me 5% tax-free, that means that $250,000 is making me $12,500 tax-free. That's one less tax form I have to file every year. And what's nice is of course, I'm making a lot more money, over $12,000 more than I would just keep it in the bank anyways. So it's just a great way to not just protect my money, but grow it. Here's another key thing. People ask, well, how safe is life insurance? Why would banks store it there? Why would even big companies store it there? Simple. Insurance companies are actually safer than their own bank. That's what's crazy. In fact, there's several examples where banks say, I don't even want to store at my own bank. In fact, I was talking to a guy recently where the reason he actually started his own policy and then he eventually started doing infinite banking for himself and others was actually because he met a banker. That guy had actual interest, like ownership interest in a bank, but he was putting all of his cash inside of his life insurance. Why would he do that? Because he knows it's safer there. Did you know that during the Great Depression, there were 35,000 banks in 1929 at the beginning of the Depression? By the end of the Depression, 2/3, there's only 13,000 banks left out of that 35,000. So 2/3 of banks failed during the Great Depression. Guess how many life insurance companies failed during that time? 4. 4 did. Why? Because unlike banks, they can't go and loan out more than what they own, like I explained earlier. Banks can go and leverage and use their money. They can do other things that could be risky. They may not get paid back on certain loans, especially if people can't pay their loans back. Not to mention if people pull their money out, like we started to see in 2023, and there's like bank runs, we started to see banks fail. We even saw some big banks fail, like I said, in 2023. That's a risk, guys. You never know if your bank's gonna be safe. But insurance companies, they have to do something. They not only are not trying to gamble with your money because they're not investing their money in high risk things, but 2, they also are legally required to buy what's called reinsurance. Reinsurance is like insurance companies on insurance companies. They protect the insurance companies in case they go under, right? In case they get into financial default. And they don't just protect the company. What they're really protecting is you. They do that for this reason. Even if the insurance company goes bankrupt, your money does not. That your money is safe and that either till another insurance company takes your policy over or until really you die and then the reinsurance company is done. So insurance companies have to buy insurance on themselves to protect you. That is one thing that you don't get with the FDIC, which by the way, the FDIC only has like 1.5% of reserves saved up. So if 10% of banks fail, good luck getting your money back. So just know that. So that's a big reason why those smart investors like to store their money there. Now, I made you this promise, like how can you actually get your money to pay you in 2 places at once? How can you grow it and not just protect it? We talked a lot about protecting, but what about growing it? The other strategy you can do that sometimes businesses and banks can do, but often they're limited, but you can do better than they can because it's on yourself. One I mentioned is that yes, it's protected from lawsuits of creditors in most states. You could have millions of dollars stored here and no one can get to that money. But on top of that, what also you can do too is you can actually leverage by borrowing from the insurance company. Yes, you'll pay them interest, but at the same time, they're paying you interest on all of that money in there, including the money you borrowed. So they're still paying you all the interest on that money, and you make a net gain there, and you can still invest it wherever you want. So now you're able to make money over here with the investment, and if you're doing it right by taking the cash flow from those investments and paying it back towards that loan, as you pay it down, you get charged less and less in interest, while on the other side, your compounding interest compounds more and more, and you make interest here, net, while also making money in your investment, speeding up your ability to get out of the rat race or to get financially free faster. That, my friends, that's one of the coolest things, why I use it for myself, why I store my money there, instead of just keeping it in the crappy bank. Heck, I don't even like to keep it in Bitcoin. I actually keep it here because I know it's safe, I can count on it every time. In fact, when I've interviewed people, even people that have been owners in banks or had family members that were owners in banks, they'll tell me all the time, they say, yes, my grandfather taught me that this is the place to store money. And I even talked to another guy who was an investor. In fact, he was a stock investor. He even started a company that teaches people how to trade stocks and options. And even he said, out of all the investments he's done, even business ventures, this was the one thing he could always count on, that it was always going to be there and was always going to grow. And that gave him security. That gave him peace of mind knowing that he had some money that was not at risk. That is why I think this is one of the best places to be. Not only is it not just legal and legit, but really it's a wise way to use your money and store your money and also leverage it in a way that allows you to become free faster. All right, so if you want to learn more about how you can actually make this work in your own life and what that really looks like, go to moneyripples.com, book a call with one of our insurance specialists to find out how to make this work, to get that max ROI on your infinite banking policy today.